Hello. This is going to be a little different than what you've seen so far because as you're watching this, I'm probably sitting in my night class right now. That's okay. This also isn't scripted very well, so we'll see how this goes. Hello again. I'm Jonathan. You might have seen me before. Maybe you haven't. That's okay. And by the way, this is like my fifth take of making this speech, so I hope this goes better this time. Anyways, today I'm going to be talking about debate at the college level and some of the weird things we talk about. So first, a quick history lesson. Debate started back in the 1890s with a debate between Wake Forest University and Trinity College. This was like the first quote-unquote modern intercollegiate debate. It's since changed a lot since then. I mean, it's been over 100 years, so you expect things to change. And yeah, debate's pretty cool. Thanks. Kidding. Gotcha. I'm going to talk about the two different formats I compete in and which are the two that Missouri State does. So the first is known as NDT debate, which stands for National Debate Tournament, and it's also the name of like the governing body. There used to be a bunch of other organizations, but in like the early 2000s, they all merged together. So there's just like one organization that runs everything, which I think is pretty nice because they used to like hate each other and like it was really cutthroat. And I'm glad it's not that way anymore. Anyways, the topic of this year's NDT style debate is talking about space like cooperation with Russia or maybe China. It's either or, not either or. It's and or, so you could pick both or you can just pick one. And the whole point of the debate is to act like you're the government and you're saying to one or both of these countries, hey, here's something we need to do in space. Like you could say, we need to go like explore farther into space, and you would be cooperating with one or both of these countries. That's pretty interesting. As well, Missouri State also does another style debate known as NFALD, which stands for National Forensics Association, Lincoln Douglas debate, which National Forensics Association is just like a whole nother separate governing body. It's kind of ridiculous how many like different debate organizations there are. But anyways, the Lincoln Douglas part of it is modeled after the Lincoln and Douglas debates for like the presidency back in the 1800s. And one difference between NFA debate and NDT debate is that NFA is a one-on-one format while NDT is a 2v2 format. And with that, NFA is a lot shorter because there's about half as much talking because there's half as many people. And that's one of the reasons I prefer NFA. Also, I should mention that the NFA current topic is about renewable energy, which I think is pretty interesting and has allowed me to talk about things that I didn't think I would be talking about. So now that I've talked about the two different formats, I'm just going to talk about like how a typical debate round goes. So what happens in both formats is the first speech is known as the affirmative constructive, where someone from the affirmative team, basically just whoever's agreeing with the resolution, gets up there and says, okay, here's a problem that's related to the resolution, and here's how we're going to solve it. So they get up there and they say, here's our plan to, say, um, build more nuclear power plants. Cool. And they say, nuclear power plants are good because they provide a lot of energy and they can operate for a long time. Now, the negative side would get up there and say, okay, that is incorrect. They can do this in multiple ways. They can say, something that's known as a disadvantage, which is just like an unforeseen consequence of what they're doing. They say, okay, if you build more nuclear reactors, it's gonna cause more people to die from radiation exposure. And then you're like, oh no, maybe nuclear reactors aren't such a great idea. Or they could present a counter plan, which is just saying another way to solve for like the lack of energy that we have. So they could say, instead of building regular nuclear reactors, we're going to build small modular reactors that can be combined, and they're a lot cheaper to build. So then they would try to argue that our method of producing energy is better than the affirmative team, and then they would have that back and forth until ultimately the judge would decide, okay, who has a better idea. Also, they could just say, you know, what you're trying to do is cool and all, but it's not within the topic, which that's called a topicality. And I dislike those kind of arguments because it gets away from the substance of debate and it's just kind of like whining that the other team is being unfair when usually they're not. It's just like a time waster, and most people don't actually believe that they are breaking the rules by reading something that's supposedly not under the topic. And finally, they could get up there and read what's called a critique, which is kind of like a disadvantage, but they're way more abstract in concept. Like, for example, you could say, instead of, before we need to like worry about our energy, we need to worry about how bad capitalism is. And you're probably thinking, what? Right? Yeah. Those are debates that actually happen. Like, don't get me wrong, of course capitalism has caused problems, but you know what's caused more problems? Communism, right? Okay, now this is the part of this where I get to talk about something that I particularly enjoy. Now, sorry, if I can find it. Here it is. Okay, technical difficulties. Now, I'm going to talk about the great old ones, which is the second half of my title to this speech. You're probably thinking, oh, Jonathan, what are the great old ones? Well, good question. You see, there's this hyper advanced alien civilization that's going to kill us all. And yes, I'm being serious. I actually get up there and debate rounds and say, hey, there's an alien species that are going to kill us all. Doesn't that just sound ridiculous? Maybe I'm not the only one. But really, this is like a pretty reliable article. It's written by 3 people from Oxford University, and they talk about it as an answer to Fermi's paradox, which is just like this theory of, okay, if there are aliens out there, why haven't we seen them yet? Well, their answer is, well, aliens are out there, they're just like hibernating, and we're not technologically advanced enough to know that they are there. However, if we continue our exploration into space, then we would potentially wake them up, and they would not be happy about that, and they would just kill us all. Doesn't that sound fun? Don't you want to be violently destroyed by a super advanced alien race? I don't know about you, but that sounds like a good day. Kidding, obviously. But that's just one example of the weird things we get to talk about in debate. Um, although stuff like that exists, debate is really more about deciding whether something is a good idea. And I think it's a really fun activity, and it teaches you a lot of useful skills. Like I know how to research pretty well just by looking all these weird things up. Like I had to sit down one day and be like, I wonder if I can find something about aliens that are gonna kill us. And guess what? I did, and it comes from a good source. So if you have any questions about like debate in general, I'd be happy to talk to you. Just like come find me. And I would definitely suggest like looking into it if you have any interest in potentially joining debate. With that being said, this is the end of my speech. Goodbye, and I'll see you on the other side of the computer.